All right, so coming in here to Atal'Dazar, kind of wanting to go over some uh, kind of general information as well as possibly a little bit of specific Warlock information. Do have one specific kind of gate skip option that was recently displayed in MDI that I would like to kind of show off here a little bit. I was unable to find a video that actually showed how to do it, but was able to replicate it fairly easily. I say fairly easily, it's actually super easy to do. That I will kind of go over after the video because unfortunately I did not record that footage until after I completed the dungeon, but would like to show that off as well. But again, just kind of showing some general tips, general information here. This is sort of the first thing I'd like to show off, which is regarding these Juggernaut enemies. These are some of the most dangerous enemies in this dungeon. I would say it's probably not even super close. They do have an ability called Merciless Assault, which they will cast right here. This is him casting Merciless Assault. Unfortunately, this one was targeted on me. This is because I was just a little bit too far away. I was out of melee range. But this next one, that'll be cast here in just a second, is actually cast on my imp. And so this is very important. These do an absurd amount of damage on Fortified. They do an absurd amount of damage when the mob is bolstered. Very easy to get one shot. Very, very easy to get one shot. So you can have everyone in your group stack in melee and there's a few options that can be used here. Some specific to Warlock, some specific to other classes. Options being like any guardian or pet or anything that can reasonably be targeted by these guardians and pets being the primary ones. Stand out from melee. You just either summon imp, have them stand out, or if you have like a monk, you can have them use ox statue if they're a brewmaster, or you can have them use their tiger statue for it if they're a windwalker. If you have a resto druid, they can use grove guardians is another one that that does function for that. But if you are responsible for that in your group, imp is the option that you are typically going with. You can use any pet and just have them go stay outside of range. If you do use anything other than imp, you do have to put them on passive so they don't walk into melee. But this helps massively reduce the damage in these pulls. Something else that I did want to mention here that I did stop on this frame for is this Blomsomni's Might, the cast that the Confessors do. This is a super, super dangerous cast. It is the primary cause for, at least in my opinion, or at least in my experience, most of the wipes that happen on this pull. This is a very common Mythic Plus pull, sometimes even pulling in some of the mobs over here as well. This is what puts the giant, holy looking bubble over the top of the mobs that prevents kicks and knocks. So very, very dangerous to let that go off because then you can't interrupt wildfires, you can't interrupt fire enchants, and you also can't knock the augur to cast that out of Blomsomni's Might. So this is the bubble here. So you see how fiery enchant is not kickable. That's why that's the gray bar. So very dangerous to let this go off. Mending Word also just a heal, so also very important to kick. But Blomsomni's Might will very potentially cause a wipe there if you're not careful. Demonic Circle, very easy setup there. Does help to, and my imp's fighting him, which is why he's kind of awkward here. You notice, and I put my pet on passive here. Demonic Circle can help you get out of line of sight for this, for the fear, which is the large kind of difficulty of this dungeon, or this boss in particular, not this dungeon obviously, but is just ensuring that you are LOS'd. Very free to put up a Demonic Circle there. I actually end up getting Devour here because I'm a little greedy, so a little bit too close. But another option as far as movement is concerned is that Warlock gate that I showed there. Very, very free, very, very easy to use. Helps get anyone who wants to greet an extra cast or wants to maybe greet a couple extra autos, whatever. Did want to speak here on the Shield Bearer of Zul. These mobs can be stunned, they cannot be feared or horrified. So Coil and Fear do not work on them. Intimidating Shout also does not work on them. Psychic Scream, but stuns do work. So stuns are the big part of what you would do here. Worthwhile to note, if you have like a Shaman, is probably the most common that will do this. Using Capacitor Totem will stun DR them very quickly. Another option is they are vulnerable to Disorients as far as I'm aware, so they can be like Incapacitating Roared or DB, Dragon Breath. Those are also options. But as far as Warlock is concerned, only Shadow Fury / Infernal / Blasphemy would work on them. Of course, the Belguard Interrupt would also work. So I don't typically think this is worth it to do it, but is worth it to note. These Venom Blasts do hurt a lot. This also does cast Unstable Hex. You can Curse of Tongues these mobs. I don't typically do it, but especially if you're worried about kicks in a pull, or if this mob is living a very long time or is bolstered, Curse of Tongues is a big viable option there. Speaking on Volcall for a moment, Destrolox can cleave multiple totems. They will not be, they probably, depending on key level, not be able to kill 2 totems on their own, but can help a weaker DPS like an AUG kill their totem as well, which does have quite a bit of value. Unfortunately, Demo does not have that same value, and in fact, Demo is not questionable or not in a tough spot on this boss, but unless you're willing to sink cooldowns, you are going to be slow at killing the totem, and more importantly than you being slow at killing the totem, you have a hard time controlling your damage against the totem because your imps will just kind of continue to hit it regardless of what you do. So if you are trying to balance that with some lesser geared DPS or some overly geared DPS, definitely very important, especially as Demonology, to watch the amount of damage that's being done by you to the totem. A small little tip is if you do interrupt these augurs and don't move them, don't like drag them away, they will just stop casting. So these augurs in particular, you can kind of just avoid most of their casts with that tech, but other augurs throughout the dungeon, definitely worthwhile to Curse of Tongues them. And a small little general tip here, there is going to be another Juggernaut in this pull, just worthwhile to note. But general tip here for the priestesses, they also do the same mechanic that main priestess does, where they'll target somebody with transfusion that just has to run to the red puddle. It's actually better to avoid knocking them when they do that, because they do, similar to the boss, damage themselves when they are transfusing the tainted blood. So very worth it to consider just allowing them to do that. Nothing super fancy here on this boss. Worth it to note the general process behind doing this fight, which is of course those Spirits of Gold. Effectively, what you want to do as a DPS or as any role in this game, in this fight, is when she casts Transfusion, pick up the red blood here on the ground, the tainted blood, before she finishes the cast. So before she begins the channel, you want to have already picked it up. It will do quite a bit of damage, so just use a small defensive so that it damages the boss instead of heals her. These Spirits of Gold will clean up the tainted blood, so that's why we kill them. They can also be long duration CC'd with Frost Trap. They can be long CC'd with Imprison, Paralysis. Basically anything that gives that long duration hard CC can be used on them. Unfortunately, Warlock doesn't have anything like that, but worth noting if you have any of those available to you. So just showing off here what you would do with Transfusion. And just moving on. Unfortunately, I interrupt my mount there. So this is actually going to be me testing a little bit some gate locations, and there are some interesting gate locations that you can go going up to Yasma. Unfortunately, none of them are super worth your time, just because they are a little bit slow to set up. But this is a case where the Warlock can save your tank some time, and you can actually throw a Warlock gate up these stairs. You do have to wait for the RP to complete, but you can gate up those stairs, save your tank a little bit of time. You can technically, and I do test this here in a few minutes, you can technically gate from that first platform after that very first set of stairs up to that like midpoint at the boss, which is what I'm testing here. And you'll actually see in just a second that there is a gate position right there. It takes a while to set up, probably not saving your tank a reasonable amount of time. It exists if that's valuable to you. Pain, Dark Pact is typically going to be enough for, especially if you Dark Pact and then after a tick or two use a Mortal Coil. Your healer probably won't have to heal you at all, unless you're on like a high tyrannical key. So worthwhile just to know what kind of defenses you can, send on that specific bit of damage there. Warlocks are naturally very, very tanky, so we're not typically super concerned with just outright dying to a mechanic. So I am pulling up here one of the gate skips that was done in the MDI. This was actually me practicing a similar gate skip to what was done by Perplexed. I unfortunately was not able to actually replicate what looked like the way a Shine cast his gate, but this is actually I'm going to show you an easier way to do that same gate skip, which is actually just to turn your camera up and cast it from the bottom up. It is actually that easy. So it is right here where I cast the gate. I just come over to the other side. This is how the other team did it very clearly. I mean, I'm using Soul Burn here, so I don't actually have to do the hard cast. And you get a target outline inside of here. Oh, you got that one. Super easy. Just turn your camera up. And this is actually the other side, because I figured out I could do it on that side, and I was like, I wonder if you can just do this same process on the other side. You can. I'm going to skip 60 seconds into the future real quick, where I take the gate and ensure that it works. And just a second here. Well, I thought it was just a second. It would have been. It would have been. I said to be patient. You can see that I do take the gate, and it works just fine. Not even almost falling off. Nothing. So, very, very free gate casts to do that skip from Razan back up to the bridge. Probably not super useful in just normal pug routes for the dungeon, but is something that, depending on your route, especially if you are going like Yasma first, or not Yasma, but Priestess first, Priestess Alenza, if you are going Priestess first or Volkal first, as opposed to going Razan first, can be super useful so that you don't have to run the whole gauntlet back up through the sides. So very worthwhile to know that gate position, in my opinion, and is probably something that I will be trying to implement in some of my personal keys, just because I do think, especially on Fortified, getting Razan so early in the dungeon can be kind of awkward, because you are kind of just backtracking and just going straight through Priestess trash or going straight through Volkal's trash is probably going to be more of a time saver if you can just gate straight back up to that bridge. So definitely something worth considering if you are in an organized group, just kind of discussing potential route changes there. That's really everything I had for Atal'Dazar. Unfortunately, they did remove a lot of the reverse snap spots in this dungeon. So nothing super, super cool outside of just a few kind of gate tricks and some general boss strategies and trash strategies in this dungeon.
Thank you very much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please absolutely do check out some of the other content available on my channel or catch me live at twitch.tv/Gadalis. Please follow so that you can receive live notifications for when I am streaming. And please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on the video.